And look, we don't have Mizzy here to talk about his parents. Billy says he's not close enough to know Mizzy's family. But on the penal system side of things, let's get over to Chris Adore Casey joining us from Norway. And the reason that you're in Norway, Chris, to my understanding, is to learn a little bit about how they deal with youth crime there. So why do they get it better than here?
Well, because first of all, when you're talking about young teenagers, they don't criminalise young teenagers in Norway at all, and indeed there are other countries that don't criminalise people until they're 18 years of age. And the reason for that is because, as I think Mizzy demonstrated pretty clearly in his interview with Piers, young people, and particularly young men, don't really mature properly until they're into their 20s. And the level of immaturity that you could see in that interview, I think, was clear for all to see. And frankly, when I watched Mizzy's interview, I thought that the whole thing was him playing around with Piers Morgan rather than the other way around. It rather looked like he had kind of managed to get one over on Piers quite a lot of that interview, because ultimately Mizzy's objective is very clear, isn't it, to get as much attention as he can, and that's not dissimilar, I would suggest, from television presenters and media stars of every different generation and every age. It is about attention seeking. Clearly, some of the things he's done are are very unpleasant for the people involved. But, you know, we've had these kind of prank TV shows on television for years and years and years. We'll remember in the 80s, there were programs where people had their cars crushed and they had no idea what was going on, and they didn't consent to that in the first place. And you know, so is it a genre that is only available to middle-aged white presenters? Because it does feel a little bit like it. We've got an 18-year-old who's capturing a lot of attention, a lot of audience, and really, I think it's all a storm in a teacup.
Chris, I'm interested in you saying that, because I'm with you on a lot of TV personalities pushing the envelope as far as they can to generate engagement, not caring about negativity, let's just get attention. But there's one thing doing that, pushing the envelope, there's another thing, illegality. We've got some videos of Mizzy's antics we can remind viewers of: breaking into people's houses, stealing people's dogs, leapfrogging over people on the street, you know, just pretty bad antisocial behaviour stuff, but also some actual sort of pretty bad criminal acts. You've got walking into people's houses and things like that. And, you know, this is what has landed him in a lot of trouble with police. So could you really say this is on a par, Chris, you know, with, I don't know, Jeremy Beadle and people back in the day?
It's exactly on a par with it, because the people who were subject of those pranks didn't have any consent. Their friends set them up, or their family set them up for it, and so I honestly don't see the difference. It's a situation where people are taking advantage of other people to create content, which many young people in particular on TikTok find funny. And so I just think, you know, he's 18 years of old. He's quite immature. When you talk about criminal acts, I mean, you know, it's on the margins of criminality, some of this stuff, as opposed to anything that would be particularly serious. I suspect eventually he'll grow out of it, as most young people do, provided they're not locked up in prison. Because this is really where Norway have got it right. They don't lock people up in prison, and they don't lock young people up in prison unless they've done something really bad, really extreme violence and long-term criminality. And if you lock teenagers up, the one thing you guarantee is when they come out of custody, as this young man will, I'm sure, within days or a few weeks, when they come out of custody, they are more criminalised than when they went in. So if we're going to have this idea that we need to lock people up for longer and get tough and all this stuff, you end up with more crime in society, as opposed to the sort of peaceful place we have here in Oslo, where there's a £3,000 barbecue. It's not even locked up. They just leave it here on the side of the on the side of the water, because no one's going to steal it. And why is that? It's not because they're getting tough and cracking down on young offenders. It's because they do the opposite.
Yeah, not going to see that in the streets of London, Manchester, Birmingham, anywhere around the UK, really, that £3,000 barbecue. Look, I want to come back to Billy while we've got you, Billy, and some of those points that Chris made about entertainment. This is just entertainment, it's just TikTok. You know, do you think it's okay what Mizzy is doing to these people for entertainment?
Nah, definitely not. Obviously, if you watch the interview I done with him, like, I made it clear that I don't condone anything he's done. But at the same time, though, like, to answer your question directly, no, it's not okay. But then to add some context, I feel like, similar to what he was saying before, like, we are in an era where it's all about shock factors, all about attention. Even though I do internet and I do make content myself, I do understand that there is repercussions with just doing anything and everything for views. Like, I'm trying to say to you, and Mizzy being a prime example of that. So me personally, like, if I was to, like, I don't know, advise any up-and-coming content creators, I would definitely say that don't feel the need to, like, do whatever comes to your mind that's gonna get views. Like actually think of like a legacy and try build something that's sustainable. I'm trying to say to you, like running in people's houses and taking dogs, that's not sustainable. There's like you can only do that once or two times, and then there's nothing you can do after that. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think that's actually very smart. It isn't sustainable at all. It's one and done. Look, Esther, we'll give you the final word on this. The solution to this, we're hearing Chris say, don't lock people up unnecessarily if it's not too criminal. I mean, could you agree with that? What's the solution for someone like Mizzy?
It depends on what you define as too criminal. I'm sure if that was his mother, that he had a young group of men breaking into a house, he would feel a bit more differently about what is too criminal. The reality is there needs to be a deterrent in place, because what you see happening now is because something like this is getting Mizzy the attention that he wants and the attention that he craves, you push the envelope, and more people are incentivized to push the envelope. Today they're entering people's houses, tomorrow they're doing something even more and generally terrifying the general public. I made the point that if he was in a different country, if he was in the US, for instance, they would actually have the right to shoot him. So, how far is too far before someone seriously gets hurt? It's not just about the fact that you don't think that what they've done is particularly criminal. It's also about the fact that how justified would someone be to react in a way that is generally in pursuit of preserving their own life as they see is being threatened. So I think it's something to not take lightly, and I think people that do take it lightly don't understand the wider societal context and the issue here with just bad parenting as well.